Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another review of Monday Night Raw. This one is from the January 25th, 1993 episode. And let's get right into it, shall we? We see Mooney outside, Sean Mooney that is, outside of the Manhattan Center as Repo Man drives up in his tow truck with Macho Man's hat. He tries to hype his matchup with Randy Savage as he enters the building. And now, because Randy Savage is in the match, Bobby Heenan is now on commentary, joining Vince McMahon and Rob Bartlett. Still, let me know who Rob Bartlett was. Was he a comedian? I think he was, but I'm not 100% sure. And was he even famous at the time? But anyway, so the first match is the Repo Man and Randy Savage match. Randy had so much left to give inside the ring, I don't understand why he was on commentary. Macho Man does give a double axe to Repo Man. Before the match even starts, Repo was trying to put the hat on top of one of the ring posts, and Macho Man came in from behind and attacked him before the bell even rang. But they go to the outside and then the bell rings, so the match is official. This is also the night after the Royal Rumble, so we're going to see if they mention any of the fallout as the show goes on. Repo tries to escape the match, but Randy catches him and gets him back in the ring. He was trying to go to the back. They do mention that Yokozuna won the Royal Rumble match by last eliminating Randy Savage. So I don't think Yokozuna wasn't on this show, so we'll see if he comes back next week. That was one of the problems that I see with a lot of the Raws from the beginning. They didn't really move any storylines further. Because even like on NXT when they were just 1 hour, they would still talk about things moving forward. But on these Raws, for some reason, like Bret Hart and Yokozuna facing off at WrestleMania, you would think for the WWF Championship, you would think would be like a big deal, but I think that was the only mention that they did, because I don't even think they had a WrestleMania, like one of the WrestleMania updates that they used to do on this show. So that was kind of odd for them not to hype that match or anything. And Yokozuna or Bret Hart weren't on the show either. So back to the match. Repo Man sends Macho Man into the steps to get control, and then he also sends his shoulder into the ring post. Bartlett does ask where they got Repo Man, and Vince tries to change the subject. Bobby Heenan says, "You'll give anyone a handout, won't you?" That was a nice insider comment from Bobby towards Vince. If you knew that Vince McMahon was the owner back in the day, and you heard that, you would probably have a nice little giggle. It's funny to hear now. So these two were really laying into each other with these moves. As stupid as the storyline was, at least they were selling that they hated each other. Bobby Heenan on commentary also. Bobby Heenan is just hilarious on commentary. I don't know if you'll think this is funny, but he does say that he does think that Hillary Clinton from the 1993 inauguration looked smoking hot. Well, he didn't say it exactly like that, but that's what I got out of it. Just funny to hear. This was like, oh yeah, this was January, so the inauguration for that year was like a couple days before that. It was what, 4 days before that, if this was live. So there's that. Randy then gives a clothesline to a diving Repo Man, then a scoop slam, and then goes for his signature elbow drop for the win. He also tosses Repo Man to the outside after the match, just tossing him over the rope or through the ropes. So hopefully they're tossing his gimmick off TV as well. Oh, how could I forget? Randy Savage got his hat back. What a great payoff. Kamala versus the Brooklyn Brawler is next. Kamala did dominate 98% of this match. Kamala then goes for the pin in this match. Not really much to say about this one, but he goes for the pin, but the Brawler is on his stomach. But I think it was done on purpose just to push whatever Kamala's gimmick was. The crowd does get behind Kamala as he goes for something in the corner, but he slides or slips. I couldn't tell if that was done on purpose or not. But then later, Kamala does hit a splash and then flips the Brawler again the wrong way for the cover. But Slick and the crowd help him to eventually turn Brooklyn Brawler in the correct way, in the correct position, to get the pinfall victory. Vince McMahon then interviews Reverend Slick after the match. He just played up the fact that he just played up Kamala's babyface turn, saying that the crowd is the reason why he's doing so well. Something to that extent. I couldn't really understand what that interview was about at all. But now the main event of the evening, Ric Flair taking on Mr. Perfect in a loser leaves the WWF. Okay, so Ric Flair is wearing red. Let's see if he wins or loses with this colored tights. If you guys remember what I said in the last episode, Ric Flair does a great job selling. I mean, you can say whatever you want about Ric Flair personally, but in the ring, he was great. At the start of the match, Perfect gave him a drop toe hold, and then he slapped the back of his head a couple times, and then Ric Flair stands up. Perfect gives him another slap, and Ric Flair just ain't having any of it. Ric Flair then goes for the test of strength, but instead pokes Mr. Perfect in the eyes. Then outside, he picks up a regular chair that you would have at your dinner table. It's not one of the regular folding chairs that we're used to in wrestling. He goes to hit Perfect with it, but Earl Hebner stops him. And then back inside the ring, we have Mr. Perfect getting tossed into the ring post from the inside, and then he starts bleeding, and he takes a spill to the outside. Mr. Perfect then gives Ric Flair a suplex from the apron to the inside for a near fall. Ric Flair then gets back on offense and gets a sleeper hold on Mr. Perfect. And then the old school thing where the referee sees if the hand will drop 3 times, but obviously Perfect doesn't let the arm drop on the third time, I guess. Ric Flair applies the figure 4 using the ropes for leverage. And here's one of my problems with the way the referees sell that. Earl Hebner has his back completely towards he has his back towards Flair, not paying any attention to him whatsoever. If wrestling was meant to be taken seriously, I don't know if we're supposed to take it seriously, but if it's supposed to be, this spot makes it look obvious that it's scripted. Why the hell is the referee just paying attention to one of the guys, especially so close to the ropes? You know, you got to be ready for anything. You got to be looking at both guys. I just don't like this spot. Then Flair, after Mr. Perfect gets out of the figure 4, goes to the top and takes the classic bump off the top rope as they go to commercial. Back from commercial, we have Flair pulling something out of his tights and hits Perfect with it. Goes for the cover, but Perfect gets the foot on the rope. Flair then with some more shots to the bleeding forehead. Perfect takes some shots in the corner, but no sells and eggs Ric Flair to hit him some more. Then Mr. Perfect with a backdrop to Flair, a forearm, and then he sends Flair into the buckle, and then another clothesline, but Flair kicks out again. Mr. Perfect then gets sent into the ropes by Flair, but as he comes back, he catches Flair, hooks him, and hits the Perfect Plex for the win. Bobby Heenan is livid. He is cursing on commentary and had to bleep whatever he's saying. Good stuff there. This also means no more Ric Flair in the WWF. He was on his way to WCW, so they wrote him off TV, losing a Perfect here, and out he goes, and Perfect looking good. He wore red, and he lost, but the bad thing is we're not going to find out if what I said last episode about the colored tights Rick wears determining the outcome of his matches until he comes back in late 2001 or whatever it was. But we do have a starting point. Red means he's going to lose, and blue means that he's going to win. So we'll take a look at that. We'll revisit that back in 2001. But that's actually the end of the episode. Let's go ahead and give some awards. For my best moment, I gave it to the Repo Man when he gets thrown out by Randy after their match, because hopefully that's the end of that gimmick. Worst moment is seeing Ric Flair having to leave the WWF. I know he goes on to WCW to do some great things there, but I'm not going to watch any WCW stuff. And I didn't, because I wasn't born, or I wasn't old enough to watch that stuff during that time, and I haven't gone back to watch any of his WCW stuff. Best match, I had Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect, obviously. The worst match was, for me, Kamala and the Brooklyn Brawler. The wackest performer, again, that just means I don't understand why he was on the show, or he just had an off night. Wackest performer for me would be Repo Man, if I have to choose anybody. He's not terrible, per se, but I don't know who else to give it to on this night. Kamala didn't really mess up any of his spots, at least that didn't look on purpose. And the Brawler doesn't really count, and I'm not going to give it to Ric Flair, Perfect, or Randy Savage. The best performer, though, I gave it to my boy Ric Flair. I would have given it to Ric Flair if he won or if he would have stayed, but since he's leaving, I'm going to give it to Mr. Perfect. And just go back and watch this match if you don't know what I'm talking about. Alright, so for my overall rating for this, I mean, this show was solely just watchable because of Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect. Nothing else on the show had any importance to it. Sure, you had Savage and Repo having their conclusion to their little feud, but in terms of what really mattered, Ric Flair losing a good TV match and having to leave the WWF was the only thing from this show to rewatch. My rating scale changes again for this episode. I didn't give it a letter grade or anything because it would technically get an F or a D. When you only do one thing that's watchable, it's not going to bring it up to an A or anything like that. So I'll just leave it at this. Flair and Perfect is a match to watch if you haven't, or if you have time to rewatch it if you haven't watched it in a while. Go back and watch it. But the rest of the show is skippable. So that's going to be it for this episode. Nothing was announced for the week after, as I can recall. So we're going to see what they do next week. With that being said, I'm out. Catch you guys on the next one.